Donald Trump, Matt Gaetz, and Marjorie Taylor Greene are allowed to say true things sometimes, so the establishment can paint them or anyone who repeat those things as unhinged conspiracy theories. Now, when you see Donald Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene and other right-wing characters talk about the deep state, it usually self-serving. The deep state is only after me. The deep state is hurting everybody. No, we know that's not true, but they actually kind of hurt the legitimacy of the argument because people just associate the deep state with Trump now. But the deep state, I've been talking about this way before Trump, way before. Most experts been talking about this way before Trump. Why do you guys think that Trump got this term from? So what would you guys say to like the average normie liberal, maybe the average person who say, oh my God, why do you guys think that there's a deep state? That's an unhinged conspiracy theory. I start with David. What would you say to people who think that that's the case?
First of all, Trump is a wimp. He's all talk. He talked about
Yes.
he talked about taking on the deep state. He didn't take on the deep state.
Yes.
He made them stronger. I'll give you one example. He was by law required to release all the JFK documents under the JFK Records Act of 1992, and he didn't. He wimped out. Again and again, Trump caved when the deep state told him what was going on. So Trump, I think in his rhetoric, you're right, took on the deep state, but in reality, he was much more cowardly.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely agree.
Yeah. And I think, look, the deep state has metastasized. Peter Dale Scott, who helped, I think, coin the term in this country, the Berkeley professors, and so much great research on the power elite in this country and the JFK assassination, thinks that it's like the weather. It's everywhere. The deep state has now been metastasized, and particularly after 9/11, has become so labyrinth and so vast that it's impossible to talk about one institution or like it was during the Cold War era when I wrote about Allen Dulles and the CIA. It's a vast thing encompassing thousands of people and various agencies. And so the deep state that believes in a sort of imperial, as Aaron said, U.S., that believes in a very aggressive national security posture is everywhere. And Trump goes along with that kind of ideology, that expansionist, aggressive military ideology. It's going to kill us all. All of us will be killed by this beast that's out of control, as Aaron said. We have to rein it back in or it will kill us.
Yeah, this is on point, and I'll pass it right back to you. But you are so on point because I agree 100%. Which is why I think that Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene are allowed to talk about the deep state, because then the establishment can say, "Oh, well, you're a Trump supporter because you believe the deep state is a real thing." And the people who think that Trump was fighting the deep state are deeply unserious, because how are you fighting the deep state when you're hiring John Bolton? How are you fighting the deep state when you're hiring Mike Pompeo?
Exactly.
And you double down on the sanctions regime. And not like he was like, I hire these people and I'm fighting them. No. You guys realize John Bolton had to convince Donald Trump not to invade Venezuela. Imagine being in a situation where John Bolton is ever advocating against war compared to your position. And the list goes down the line when you look at all the horrible people he hired, like Steve Mnuchin. He hired Nikki Haley. We see the campaign that she's running, the pro-war campaign she's running. He hired her for UN. So I always love laughing at Trump supporters who still think he's some sort of anti-establishment fighter, despite all the evidence to the contrary. So you're 100% on point, David. But anyway, Aaron, I know you want to chime in. I apologize for interrupting, but go ahead.
Oh, no worries. I mean, I wrote my dissertation on the deep state and built on Peter Dale Scott's work. And even before Peter Dale Scott was talking about the deep state, he was talking about something very analogous in the early 1990s, before the Turkish deep state term had even been invented. It was the deep political system, saying that in any advanced civilization, you can have a political system that operates outside, inside, but also outside of the law. So this is a way that you have laws that work in a certain way, and you have institutions that function the way they're supposed to according to laws. But then you have this political power that can just be brought to bear, power of oligarchy, the power of the people who really have the wealth and power in a civilization. And so this is a serious concept, and we need to understand it. We can think of the deep state as oligarchy, the wealthiest people. We can think of it as the empire, the way that these institutions work to allow them to dominate the world and to dominate the U.S. It's all of those institutions that allow for top-down rule in a nominal democracy. And we have a lot of that. That's why, Gillens and Page, that's the name of two political scientists. They wrote a paper, one's at Princeton, one's at Northwestern. This is around 2016. And it just says that, using all of these fancy political science methods, they say that the public, the median person, average people have no political power really whatsoever. Policy preferences of the wealthy are always win out, essentially, and the U.S. is not really a democracy. So that's already describing a system that functions in a top-down way. But then when you see interventions like the JFK assassination, I mean, the way that cover-up snapped into place, the way that people around like Dean Acheson and Walt Rostow, Eugene Rostow and Joe Alsop, they were lobbying immediately as soon as Ruby kills Oswald. These establishment oligarch-connected figures are lobbying the administration, saying you need to create a blue ribbon commission and settle the dust on this, and we got to establish that it was a lone nut and there wasn't anybody else involved. I mean, this is like a kind of power that is outside of the Constitution and can override the Constitution. It's you have to really get into some scary kind of political theory to get down to it, namely Carl Schmitt and the Nazis. I mean, this is the idea. This is the Nazi kind of fascist system. It's like, if the system is in danger and there's an emergency, you have to empower the state to do whatever it takes to survive. And so what does the U.S. do after World War II? It fabricates more or less a never-ending emergency, the Cold War, and this supposedly existential threat of communism. It doesn't matter that the Soviet Union lost 27 million people and was in no shape to threaten really anybody outside of its immediate near abroad because it occupied those countries. They turned the Soviet Union into this boogeyman and created this entire system to allow for the U.S. to dominate different parts of the world, supposedly to fight this emergency that it faced. But that's really what we're talking about.
Darren and the war on terror after 9/11, these guys live in caves that are suddenly capable of threatening the biggest empire in the world. And so trillions of dollars have to be spent to defeat these guys in caves. It's ridiculous. The war on terror is another complete charade. I mean, they come up with these cover stories again and again, every generation, and we fall for them.
Yeah,
I cringe at the people who, for example, fall for the Ukraine war, the people who fell for the Syrian war, because
even the coup in Ukraine, you shouldn't have fallen for the 2014 thing.
Yes, and you mentioned the war on terror, David. I was in high school. Actually, I was in middle school, then high school during George W. Bush's Junior's administration, and that is what radicalized me. You guys want to know why I cover foreign policy so much? Why I'm obsessed with empire? That is what did it, and I think a lot of our generation see through it because we grew up through the Iraq War. But I don't know how people see people was smeared as Saddam apologists because they spoke out against the Iraq War. Now people are falling for the same thing again, calling people Putin apologists when they're speaking out against the Ukraine proxy war. And one thing I won't go ahead.
Yeah, Nick, I was going to say that that's why Bobby Kennedy Jr. in his campaign for president talks about the quote forever wars. Yes. America, my whole life, I'm 71 years old, has been at war, giving weapons, fomenting war somewhere on the globe. Just absurd. And Bobby makes the connection to the homeland. It's crushing our democracy, this imperial, aggressive military strategy. And it's crushing, through taxation, our middle class. So we have a disappearing middle class in this country. Standard of living is falling. We're in a situation where our water and air and the drugs we take are poisonous, harming us, and there's huge profits being made. So this imperial state is not healthy for children and never living things, as we used to say during the Vietnam War. And enough of it. We've got to take it back because, as Aaron said, it's life versus death. It's the forces of greed and death on one side, and the forces of life and democracy on the other.
Yeah, people have no idea how our empire relates to the current quality of life that we live in. When you look at former empires, you guys know more than me because both of you guys are well-versed historians, but when you look at empires before, they expand their empire, they overreach, They expand their imperial conquest while abandoning the people at home, and that is quite literally what we've seen in the United States. And obviously, from someone who come from the victim of state violence, when I see foreign policy, when I see what happened to the Palestinians, when I see what happened in the Middle East, I'm reminded what happened to my community, and foreign policy often, very often, comes home, and that is what you're seeing with Cop City. In Cop City, anyone who protests against the police, they are labeling domestic terrorists. They're labeling terrorists for resisting the state, and that's literally the same thing they did to Iraqis. Yeah, absolutely. You want to chime in, Dave, for free?
No, it's what you're saying is the truth. They're bringing home the same authoritarian policies to this country, and they're stopping dissent. Anyone who says the militarization of the police, like in Georgia, Cop City, is a bad thing, is being rounded up and called a terrorist, or shot at as if they protested, and thrown in jail. This country is out of control at this point. Now we have the Republican Party, as you said earlier, it's the one that's speaking out against the excesses of the FBI. I mean, what the hell happened to our own Democratic Party that we became the voice of surveillance, authoritarianism, of totalitarianism? Something really is wrong. And Bobby Kennedy Jr., I believe, is running the last gasp campaign within the Democratic Party to save the soul of the party and the nation. And he deserves all the support. He may not be perfect, but God bless him. He's speaking God's truth most of the time. And he deserves our support.
Yeah, I want to add to this and also point out something that David is a part of, and that David really deserves credit for. Maybe 5 years ago, there was an initiative, maybe around 5 years ago, an initiative to create a petition with many signatories for a Truth and Reconciliation project in the United States. And it had as signatories people like, and David was one of the main people behind getting this going. And it had signatories like Daniel Ellsberg, Oliver Stone, Robert Kennedy Jr., Richard Falk, Blakey, Robert Blakey, or the guy who was the chair, the lead counsel for the last investigation of the political assassinations of the 60s. This thing that took place in the late 70s. So it had a lot of signatories, and it issued a statement saying that the political assassinations of the 1960s, including John Kennedy, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and Robert F. Kennedy, bear all the hallmarks of being national security state acts, and they should be investigated. They derailed democracy, and we have never recovered from them, and we must have full disclosure on this. So Robert F. Kennedy Jr. signed this years ago. He's not just saying like, oh, it's a family thing, and these great leaders were destroyed. He was also saying, look, they killed Malcolm X too. They killed They killed Martin Luther King too, and we need truth and reconciliation. That is throwing down the gauntlet. Like, this is not a guy. People are like, he'll never, look at how he backs down to AIPAC. He'll never confront the deep state. Well, or the empire or whatever. But that, you can't get more confrontational than signing some kind of statement like that. You're basically saying the emperor has no clothes, and this is a cloaked, some kind of, the implication is that it's a cloaked fascist sort of regime that we live under that just wants to pretend that it's something else. I mean, it's a really powerful thing, and David deserves credit for that, but so does RFK. People like Dan Ellsberg for standing up and saying, yeah, this is the truth, and we need to be a part of this. So I think that this concept is hugely important.
Aaron, thank you. That was the open letter, and the Washington Post was the only newspaper in this country that had the courage to write about that huge effort, the Truth and Reconciliation effort. By the way, another signatory to that open letter was the surgeon who worked on the mortally wounded president in Parkland Hospital in Dallas the day that JFK was shot. And he saw evidence with his own eyes, medical evidence, that he was shot from the front, the grassy knoll area, as well as from behind. That's a conspiracy. So he is one of the signatories, Dr. McClellan, of that open letter that I helped organize. So hundreds of people have now signed it. This country, by law, by our history, we bled for it, deserves the full truth and deserves to live in a free country. We fought for the right to vote. We fought for truth and reconciliation, and we should have it. This is our country. We demand it. David Crosby, when he was on stage at the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967 with the rock band The Byrds, said President Kennedy was killed by a conspiracy. It's your country. You have a right to know the truth. We have a right to know it today. And Bobby Kennedy, God bless him, is giving us a chance once again to get at the truth.
Yeah, well, so you guys make a lot of convincing arguments. I'm very naturally distrustful of people who are looking for power, especially after having my heart broken. So I will continue to probe and question RFK and his support. I think that's what we should be doing, because I think if he's an honest person, that will make him better, right? If we grill our candidate, that's just the mindset I have now. So I love that a lot of things that you guys bring up. I love the fact that he fight empire. But we gotta continue to push them on issues that we disagree with, and I think we gotta maintain that pressure.